Redditors who had a gunshot wound. How did it happen and how does it feel? Accidentally shot by a relative who was handling a gun they thought was unloaded. Entered lower left abdomen. Immediately hurt but got worse over the next 25 minutes till they got me to the hospital. Passed out as they wheeled me in. Wound up needing partial bowel resection and appendectomy and 6 days in the hospital. Now dealing with an intracutaneous fistula and abscess. 0 tenths do not recommend. Geloshed. Accident on someone else's part. .40 Smith & Wesson gold dot hollow point into my upper chest. Out. Back in my bicep and out the back. Same bullet. 0 expansion and luckily didn't hit any bone. I've felt worse pain. The burning sensation was the most intense part. 4 years ago. You can still touch my arm and feel the bullet's path through the muscle. When I was 15 I dropped an old .22 LR revolver out in the woods, 70s model without a hammer block. And it landed on the ground facing upwards and discharged into my leg. I didn't even realize I had been shot at first as it hit a nerve and my leg immediately went numb. I thought I had gotten lucky because I thought it missed me. Then I pulled my pants leg up and saw blood. It went in just above my knee and ended up somewhere in my butt cheek. Doctors said it narrowly missed my femoral artery and the hollow point bullet didn't expand. So they left it in there. Through my leg without doing any lasting damage. My leg was numb for about 2 weeks but has been fine ever since. That was 20+ years ago. Since then I have taken gun safety very seriously. A friend of mine himself in the face accidentally with his mom's .22 pistol. He said it hurt eventually but he doesn't really remember the pain right off the bat as he thinks shock panic took over the pain. I had 3 gunshot wounds from a shooting at my middle school. 1 in the leg and 2 in the abdomen. If we are honest, the one in the leg hurt most. In the leg it burns and gets worse over time. It isn't the initial impact but the after effect before you get painkillers is the worst. In the abdomen the pain spreads and feels throbby. The initial impact hurts more on this one. Got robbed on a bus when I was in college. Thief caught me sleeping so when he started pulling my laptop bag. I resisted. The guy started shooting at the floor trying to scare me. Which didn't happen cause I was convinced it was a fake gun. Then, 1, 2, 3 shots. 2 on the right leg and 1 on the left. I felt nothing. At least nothing I can remember. Finally. My bag handle broke. He took the bag and ran away. I followed him. Jumped on him from behind and we both rolled on the curb. He got up first and got into a car that was waiting for him. I came back to the bus. Knocked the door and got back to my seat. Crying. One of the passengers was a nurse. She took whatever she could find and used it as a tourniquet. I was taken to the hospital in the same bus where everything happened. Luckily, the shot on the left leg was just a couple millimeters away from the artery. Otherwise I'd have died in less than 4 minutes. After the incident I was on medication for months to prevent clots. The heat of the bullet did damage the artery to the blood flow was affected. Also, one of the bullets broke my fibula which required surgery. Recovery took about 8 months and to the date. 13 years later. It still hurts sometimes when it's cold and humid. Long time ago, 1969. Rabbit hunting with a .410. Alone. 21 years old. Walking through tall grass, woods area chasing rabbit. Overconfident. Safety off. Tripped over a small log buried in the grass. Gun goes off. Foot felt like it was hit with a big hammer. Looked at it. Hole in the boot. Smoking. Panic. 1/4 mile from house. 35 miles from hospital. Got up. Hobbled to a farmhouse. They called ambulance. Took my boot off and gunpowder had cauterized wound. Finally got to hospital. Hole in the top of my foot about size of a dime. Hole in the bottom about size of a $50 with muscle hanging out. Fixed me up. Lots of pain after. Got infected. Looked bad for a while. But drugs did the trick. Ended up with one toe with no bone sewed together with toe alongside. Still have a few pieces of buckshot in my foot that will be there when I die. Still can hurt on some days. But once the infection was cleared up, no real problems. I got a .22 bullet in the quad muscle. It felt hot. Got it taken out and it just felt like a bruise for a few weeks. I don't know how it happened. It hurt like hell. My vision narrowed so much that it looked like I was looking through straws. I thought that saying wasn't serious until that. I got hit after a ricochet. And it got stuck under the skin of my index finger. That was over 30 years ago. And I'm still trying to get it removed since it hurts when I lift weights. The GPs I've talked to say I need to see a hand surgeon. But the hand surgeon I went to said it was too easy to remove for him since it's just below the skin, so said he has better uses for his time. Sucks to be in pain and have money so I can afford the help but to not get it. Once had a patient scream, "Ah, that hurts more than shooting myself," when moving him to operating room bed. Crazy sauce. But I can't imagine the pain. It's so much slower than in movies and TV. Thank you for everyone's responses. I find it interesting. My dad was shot during the Gulf War. And he told me that it felt like being jabbed with a cigarette butt. He said it felt sharp and hot. Burns like hell from what I remember. I passed out shortly after, so I can't comment too much on it. Recovery was up, but I got to keep my leg. Technically, I've encountered bullets twice in my life. But I'm still iffy on whether or not either one counts as being shot. The first time, I was young, like maybe 7 and it was a ricochet from a small rifle round off pavement, something around a .22 caliber I think. It wasn't buckshot. But the slug broke apart on impact and I only received part of the round, so it was small. It bounced up off the ground and lodged in my back muscle. About 1.5 inches from my spinal column. It was a neighbor kid, might have been 9 showing off his new hunting rifle to his friends, and he accidentally discharged the gun because he didn't know how to unload it properly. His mom didn't know he knew how to get into the gun safe and his dad wasn't home. So they didn't even know to be worried about him playing with it. But he desperately wanted to show it off. I was playing with his little sister on the other side of some bushes in the yard. At first I thought I had been stung by a red hornet. Then it ached. For weeks. Looking back on it now. It's totally nuts to think about. But we didn't tell any adults for years. We just got the first aid kit from another neighbor kid's garage. Cleaned me up. Made up a story about falling on some barbed wire and getting cuts. And I stayed out of the sprinklers for the rest of the summer so I wouldn't need help with it. I think my parents didn't find out about it until I was 20. Because I had injured my spine and was having surgery. And it came up on the X-rays prior to surgery. The second time, I was pinned down in a park while 2 gang members exchanged fire. And one of their bullets grazed my thigh muscle. Wrong place. Wrong time. I knew the feeling by then. So it wasn't super shocking. But scary nonetheless. Probably the scariest thing I've ever been through. Hiding in a jungle gym with 2 younger kids. Trying to keep them from being a distraction. As far as I know, I was the only casualty that day. But I wasn't paying much attention to the gang members. I was more focused on the bystanders. When it was all over, the EMTs showed up with the cops. I got a couple glue stitches and a gauze wrap. and on my way I went. I don't remember the pain the second time. Just a vague memory of a burning flesh sensation. Like if somebody had stuck a lit cigarette to my leg. But I'm pretty sure that's mostly because of adrenaline. Again, it ached for a while after. A couple of weeks at least. I have a handful of scars. But these are both pretty faded. Still a fun story or two for a pretty nondescript middle-class middle American housewife-looking lady to tell when somebody notices them at the neighborhood pool. When I was a first-year medical student I was super broke. I lived in a cheap rent apartment. I got shot in a gang initiation drive by shooting. Wrong place, wrong time. I got hit in my left shoulder, arm and neck. It happened so fast I didn't think it was real until I saw the blood. I even tried to convince myself maybe it was a paintball gun for a couple seconds because I thought there was no way I just got shot randomly walking down the street. Initially felt like someone slapped me on the shoulder after a bad sunburn. I reached up and felt the wetness of the blood. I remember jumping to safety behind a bush and starting running away scared I was going to be shot at again. Didn't feel anything until I got to the hospital. That's when it started to hurt. Had pain for a couple days. Felt like my whole arm was heavy for a few weeks and pain only with movement. Pain pretty much resolved after a couple months. Had some hypersensitive anxious moments and scary dreams for about 6 months after. Now realize was classic PTSD. All better now. Have had ricochets hit me a few times. Once a 9mm round bounced its way back into my face and busted my lip tooth pretty good. Another time a .38 came back and hit my chest with what felt like the force of a truck. Got bruised up good from that one. Got some others I can think of later. I was a very stupid and reckless young man. I have no memory of it other than second-hand information. I was waiting at a bus stop with my girlfriend when I got struck by a stray bullet in my right shoulder. After entering my body, it shattered across my torso, messing up my spinal cord, leaving me paralyzed as a result. My uncle put it best. It's like getting kicked in the balls. But in the legs. And arms. I was trying to stop someone I knew from committing suicide and I ended up getting shot through the knee. I had no idea it had happened. I didn't feel it at all. Till I tried to put my foot down. That's when the pain started. Obligatory not me, but this TIFU popped up recently. Dude accidentally shot himself in the leg. It's brutal. And there are pictures on the update, NSFL. Reddit.com. So when a bullet hits a hard object, it doesn't always go through entirely. So when I was shooting with my family, a bullet deflected and hit me in the shin. It didn't hurt as bad as I thought, but it did hurt like hell. I was serving in the army and running away from gunfire when it just jumped up and bit me right in the buttocks. They said it was $1 million wound. But the army must keep that money cause I still haven't seen a nickel of that $1 million. The only good part was all the ice cream they fed me. It doesn't hurt as much, at first, as movies portray. The second it happens, it feels like you got a quick injection. It slowly hurts more over time. Horribly. Got a skid mark from some kind of 7.62 on my shoulder in Afghanistan. Felt like I got hit with a small rock at first. Then burning for an hour or 3. The wound was about 1.5 inches long and maybe 3/8 wide. Had a softball-sized bruise for about a week and sore. 0 tenths would not do again. Shot once in Iraq. Hot. Hot as hell. Feels like someone branded you with a hot iron. It happens so fast you wonder where the blood is coming from. You think to yourself, this can't be my blood. Right? Luckily my injury was just meat, no bone or organs. That was about 15 years ago. I don't think about it often as it feels like a lifetime ago. I didn't feel it hit. But I did feel it exit. I heard an explosion and my back was instantly on fire. Like someone had taken a blowtorch and held it to my back. I had my rifle slung over my shoulder and a pistol on my hip. So immediately I assumed that my gun had gone off. It took a second to register that it was not my gun. High-powered hunting rounds are designed to mushroom and expand as they travel through an animal. So it made sense that the entrance was small and most of the damage externally was the exit. I was out hunting and the 15-year-old with me disregarded instructions that we were done for the day. And to unload the rifle. I had walked back to get a trail cam and he looked up. Saw movement. And foolishly fired thinking I was a feral hog. We had seen a group earlier that day and he was very excited about shooting them if we got the chance. Year-old excitable brain making a snap decision without taking the time to think. It's not like the movies. I didn't fly back 10 feet. Or even fall down. I stayed conscious the entire time and was able to get into my truck and have someone drive me the 15 minutes into town to the hospital. I sure wasn't waiting on an ambulance to get out to the farmland and waste time trying to find my exact location. Didn't really feel anything at first. Just sort like if someone flicked you with their finger. Then it starts to burn. Does it burn? Joloshed. I'm a bit late. I was shot in the face with a 9mm. 10 inches from my face when my roommate decided to play with his gun while aiming at my head. But I felt literally nothing. I was unable to move. So my chin was at my chest. And I could look around. I could hear everything going on around me. But I couldn't will myself to move. My ears rang. I could see the blood run down my chest and I was fascinated by what was going on. Still trying to figure everything out. A neighbor barged into the house yelling, "What happened?" and said he called the police. My roommate screamed that he shot me. He was freaking out. But I stayed calm for some reason. My thoughts were simply, oh. Okay. That's what happened. That makes sense. I seen him holding the gun earlier. I remember thinking this is how I was going to die. I was okay with that. I was just sad that it was likely that my family would just find out on the news. Looking back, I'm guessing adrenaline kicked into overdrive the moment the bullet pierced my skin. It seemed to be so fast that I didn't even hear the gun go off. My body just reacted. Ears ringing. The thing that blows my mind the most is just calmness I was feeling. I was so at peace with dying. So accepting. I wish this had a serious tag. About 15 years ago, I was the victim of a home invasion robbery as I was in my living room with some friends. Guy came in, fired some shots, pointed the gun at my face, and demanded all my money. I gave him the $30 I had on me. And then a second later, pow! As he had turned to run away, he dipped his gun down and fired that last shot that went through a table, a chair and both of my feet, completely sweeping them out from under me like a cartoon. The bullet got 2 toes on my right foot and then also went through the meat of my left foot. I didn't feel anything, but as I reached down to grab my right foot, I felt my big toe and the next toe just kinda dangling inside my sock. I looked up at my friend, who was freaking out, and I said, "My toe is off." Like super calmly. The 911 operator instructed one of my friends to apply pressure with a towel. My pal is a big dude, and he said he was squeezing as hard as he could. But I couldn't feel a thing. My whole foot was numb. And I didn't even realize that my left foot had been hit. The medic in the back of the ambulance told me I was the calmest he'd ever seen a gunshot victim when he discovered that my left foot had also been struck. I don't remember any blood at all. About this time, you might notice my name has some 420s in it. And yeah, maybe the weed helped. But I'm a big believer in not doing the panic. At the hospital, the nurses go to remove my sock and they told me not to look. But I did. And they were ready for me to freak out or something. But I just said, "Ha. So that's what the inside of a toe looks like." It was like stringy meat danglies with some bone shards mixed in. Almost like pulled pork with some sea salt chunks or something. Pretty gnarly looking. Still couldn't feel a thing. Then the doctor came in and super nonchalantly says, "Oh yeah. We can't save those. We've gotta cut them off." And that was the first real feeling I remember having. The dread finality of that decision that he just sorta casually came to. Ouch. A tear or two were definitely shed. I told the nurse, "I'm a drummer. And that is my kick drum foot," and she says, "Have you heard of Def Leppard? Their drummer is missing an arm." I knew she meant well. But that stung. I felt a lot of things after that. General soreness. Depression. Anxiety. Anger. Embarrassment when I'd need help walking. The phantom pains. Having to take the stitches out of my foot on my own was easily the most painful thing I've ever felt. Holy. 15 years later. I walk just fine and can still run just as fast as ever. Minus the age. And I drum no differently. I still feel the phantom pains that you hear about. It feels like my toes are curled up backwards under my feet. If that makes any sense. And sometimes, there is a real sharp, piercing pain that can really make me wince. Chain link fences are now my arch nemesis. And maybe the shame of that is that the most profound feeling I've gotten from this whole ordeal. Not me. But my boyfriend. He was camping with his cousin and one of his friends and out of nowhere for no reason got shot with a 12-gauge double alt buck. He said he didn't feel anything and his leg went numb. Yes. He can still walk. Got a .40 through my hand and into my stomach during a mugging. Shooter was already leaving a block away and turned back to shoot at me and a friend. I had my hand up in a "what do we do now" pose and the bullet entered my hand from the outside. Hit the bone and the tendons. Got redirected down and entered my stomach in an angle. It shattered the bone in my hand. Which was a good thing. It was going straight for my heart but instead it went to my stomach in a diagonal angle and stayed in the fat. Felt no pain because adrenaline was so high. Heard the pop and my hand started vibrating from it hitting the bone. Then I ran for my life because they kept shooting. Didn't even notice it was a real gunshot until much later. Obligatory not me. But my brother. He was shot in the head about 4 years ago. As he describes it, he said he didn't exactly hear the shot. But he figures it was loud because it rang in his ear for a long time. He said it initially felt like the sting you get right as you get a vaccine. But all the way in his head. The bullet went through one of his eyes, exploding it. And he said that while his eye did sting, it just mostly felt wet, I guess. He never really knew how to describe it past that. The doctor told him later that his eye didn't hurt because by the time the initial shock faded, he didn't have an eye to be able to feel pain in. He didn't feel anything too excruciating for a little less than a minute after he got shot. And because he lost his vision and saw nothing, he thought he was dead. He soon realized he wasn't. Of course. Because then it started to hurt like hell. He's okay now. Luckily he didn't have any kind of brain damage. But he is permanently blind. Edit. Here's a link, google.com. To the news report since some people don't understand anatomy face with rolling eyes. I got hit in the arm. I was fortunate it was minor but it's been more than a decade and I still can't believe how unbelievably hot it was. Initially it wasn't bad but as minutes passed, it felt like someone was holding a flame up to my arm. Some guys were trespassing, shooting ducks on our property when I was 14. I was chasing our pet calf around and thought I heard voices and went for a look. Saw the guys and turned to leave because I didn't care. People gotta eat, yo. One of them turned and fired towards me based on movement. Got my left shoulder and top of my back and neck from behind. I was wearing a swandry, a thick woolen farm coat thing. And it took most of the impact as it got reeked. Felt like lots of bee stings that didn't stop stinging. Then cold and aching. I walked back to the house and didn't really get what had happened. Getting patched up hurt more because of the digging around for wool fibers in the holes. Edit. Spelling. Was a negligent discharge from a friend that found its way into my back. Left me paralyzed as it hit my T12 vertebrae. I first fell straight back down to the ground and didn't feel anything, but then I felt extreme pain in my lower back, then the feeling of a hot liquid running down me. All I could do was tell and swear and grasp onto anyone that was near me. Obviously it was the worst pain anyone could imagine, and I never again want to feel that. Edit. For everyone wondering, it was a .22 bullet that hit my T12 vertebrae. It missed my spinal cord, but the impact caused paralysis anyways. Because of that, my recovery has been well and I am able to move everything but my left calf and foot. I'm walking on crutches but still use my chair by often. Also, yes, I am still friends with my friend and we have gone shooting together since. Well, wearing a vest. It hurts significantly more right off the bat. The plus side being that it was a 9mm and was stopped from going on a joyride to the Lung Cafe. The other hit was a thigh wound that missed my femoral by a solid inch. It did, however, hit the femur, giving me a decent fracture. Felt like a bee sting for a second. Then my leg hurt like hell. I was still able to support myself and return fire, which was the scariest thing I've ever experienced. My recommendation: if you're going to get in a gunfight, don't. Got hit by a negligent discharge from a guy standing near me that failed to clear a gun. Getting shot didn't really hurt, but realizing I got shot hurt like a. I knew something hit me in the leg, but it wasn't painful until I lifted it up and then tried to put weight back down on it, and all of the shattered bone crunched back together. Here are a couple of X-rays of what it did to my tibia and fibula. Imager.com. Imager.com. Here is what it looks like 15 years later. Imager.com. I was walking home from a movie and got hit in the thigh. It felt something like being stabbed with a burn. I was lucky that it was really only a graze. No entry. I sat on the ground for a few minutes. Then limped the rest of the way home. And bandaged up. It felt better after a few days.